Our next presenter, we're taking it back to Dr. Christine Hughes from the Florida Association of Infant Mental Health. Christine will be taking us on our final stretch of our Super Trauma Informed Saturday portion and we'll be presenting a presentation on trauma-informed strategies to nurture resilience in young children. Dr. Christine Hughes, welcome back. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, so we started off with some talk about trauma, right? And it might have gotten a little uncomfortable. We thought about all the sad and awful things that can happen to children and what it looks like when that shows up in the classroom, right? And then I hope that you really enjoyed Adriana's presentation. Mindfulness is one of the best strategies we have to connecting to ourselves, to connecting to that present moment, and for helping our bodies and brains to get out of that stress activated state and back into what we call the rest and digest state, right? A kind of easy, safe feeling state of being. So we are going to end today on a much more positive note, and we're going to move into resilience and talking really about what it looks like and what we can do with young children to promote resilience, because it is true that we cannot save everyone. We cannot prevent abuse and neglect, or many of the ACEs from happening. A lot of times with your role in children's lives, you find out after the fact that it's just something that they have experienced already, right? So as much as our goal is to prevent, we cannot always do that. And so I also want to offer you what we can do when we are trying to build the resilience and the well-being and the positive development of children. So I am going to share my screen again. Give me just a minute. Share, and then let me put this in our presentation mode so you can see it well. Okay. So we're going to be talking about strategies to nurture resilience, right? We're going to end this with the positive. Here are the things that we can do to support resilience. And these things are going to be things that you can do for all children, but they will be especially important for children who've already experienced trauma, right? So we'll talk about some elements of resilience. And then we'll also talk about specific strategies and things to do in the classroom, which will include a little bit about specific mindfulness practices you can do with young children as well. And it sounded like from the chat during Adriana's session that many of you have started incorporating mindfulness practices into your classroom, which is fantastic. And we hope to be able to bring you a lot more practice, a lot more learning, and many, many more strategies to help support you on that journey over the year. So let's take it back, right? We're grounded today in our Super Trauma Informed Saturday in the meaning and the essence of a trauma-informed care system, right? So what does this mean? The National Child Trauma and Stress Network describes it this way, right? So this is another view of what we can consider a trauma-informed system. It's a system in which everyone involved recognizes and responds to the impact of traumatic stress on everyone who comes into contact with that system. Right? So a systems approach technically is not only about the children, although we do have a child focus here today. It also has to do with you as employees, and it has to do with all of us as coworkers and colleagues. It has to do with your leaders as the leaders of your programs and the people who make decisions, right? So a trauma-informed system is one where everyone recognizes and responds to the impact of traumatic stress And so a program infuses and sustains trauma awareness, knowledge, which is something you're getting here today, and skills into everything that the organization does, into the organizational culture, right? Trying to create that culture of well-being, into your organizational practices, and even into your organizational policies. So that's a lot to dig into. Today, we're really focusing on the classroom and strategies for you. But there is a lot to unpack if you're really interested in creating a trauma-informed childcare program, right? There's many, many levels, and it doesn't have to do only with the work directly with young children and families. I think sometimes they call these the 4 R's. It's just a sort of more helpful way of being able to remember what a trauma-informed care system looks like, right? So when we talk about everybody in the system, if it's trauma-informed in your program, in your classroom, you are going to be hopefully doing these 4 things. 1, realizing the widespread impact of trauma and pathways to recovery. The second one is recognizing signs and symptoms of trauma. Right? So we may start with that baseline understanding of, wow, a lot of people have ACEs. That's a fact. I think it's the latest research shows us that about 70% of adults have 1 or more ACE. That is the vast majority of adults in this country have experienced at least 1 adverse childhood experience. And there's a very significant proportion of our population, almost 20% of people who have 4 or more, right? So the first level is just recognizing how many people have these experiences and what that impact can be on our bodies, on our brains, on our emotional and mental well-being, right? That second piece, I hope to have helped you with a little bit in the morning, right? Recognizing what some of the signs and symptoms of trauma might be. The third piece is responding, right? So with all of our knowledge that we have now, and of course, hopefully always learning more, what do we do with that? The third piece of being a trauma-informed program or system or organization is about using that information to integrate what we know to change our practices, to change our policies, to change something as simple as the ways that we greet people at the door and welcome them into our space. And the fourth piece, which Adriana also touched on, is that we always have to be thinking about ways that we might be unintentionally re-traumatizing children who have already experienced trauma, right? Or even adults. When we're thinking about it at the program level, at the organization level, the leadership can consider and think about what that means for their own staff, right? What that means for you all in interacting as colleagues and coworkers. It's part of our responsibility in a trauma-informed system to think about potential experiences or places in a process that can be re-traumatizing for people, right? And we want to resist that. We want to try very hard not to do that. And so, that goes for the children in your classroom as well, especially as you may get to know families better. You may learn a little bit more about their family history, their family story, and that young child's experiences. If there's some trauma there and you learn about it, it's shared with you, you can take some really clear steps to try to avoid some things that you might learn along the way that will be activating to that child, right? And it may not be to the rest of the class, but you may learn in being in relationship with that child and being together for, so many hours, day after day, you might start to notice those patterns, and you can choose to actively try not to re-traumatize them. So these are just another way of looking at kind of a program, system, organizational level, what we can do to be trauma informed. Always using our knowledge and hope and trying to figure out how we can do better for those individuals to keep them feeling safe. So let's really dig into resilience, right? So people think of resilience as this ability to, bounce back after something difficult happens, right? Or to overcome some hardship. And what we really like to think about resilience as is, in the end, right? Or after some moment of hardship or an adverse experience or a trauma, does that person have overall negative outcomes because of it? Or do they have positive ones? Right? So it doesn't mean that the trauma didn't impact them. They still have a lot of these purple and gray and pink boxes over here in that negative, the kind of negative outcomes, the negative impact. It's happened to their bodies, it's happened to their brain, and it's piling up. But does the protective factors outweigh the negative impacts of the trauma, right? So that's why we like to think of it almost as a seesaw. And so here you see that there's both. There are elements and there are things that have absolutely impacted this child negatively, right? Their physical health, mental health, learning ability. However, there's more protective factors that were present that's actually leaning the seesaw towards positive outcomes. And you can see, if you see notice where this little guy's body is positioned, it's positioned just to the right of that balancing point, right? Which means that even though this child has experienced trauma and had some negative effects from it, there's more there to support their positive outcomes. And so they're tending on a developmental track towards positive outcomes, which is what we want for all children, right? Resilience is not just like really bad things happen, we forget about it, and we never think about it again, and we just, go forward. It is not that. If any of you have tried to do that, you may realize that things show up again. They show up in different ways. And especially if it was a really traumatic experience, unless we actively confront it and work through it and go through the healing process, hopefully with a professional guiding you, then it will constantly be impacting you. You just might not realize it, right? So resilience is about those positive and ultimately positive outcome, right? So those protective factors, those really positive things that we can build in children and in people are going to be what shifts the balance from that trauma impacting them really negatively to it turns out that they actually do have some positive outcomes in life. And that's what we want for every child. I'm gonna say it again. The one most important thing that children need to be resilient is a relationship. At least one stable and committed relationship with a parent, caregiver, or other important adults. The research is very clear on this. The single most important thing that a child needs to end up with positive outcomes in life is at least one stable, positive relationship, right? And it's because, as we talked about earlier, It is what makes the difference between intense stress being toxic to our body and tolerable. Just that presence of that person being responsive to our suffering, scaffolding, and helping, a child understand to whatever way they can, right? In a developmentally appropriate way, scaffolding their understanding of what happened, acknowledging their feelings. This is awful. You really miss mom. I know. And having that co-regulation, that literally is what protects children from the disruption that causes developmental delays, that causes our harm to our physical health, that causes all of those learning related challenges, right? The buffer is that one safe and stable relationship. And you all can be that. It does not need to be a parent, does not need to be a family member. It absolutely can be you as a caregiver. So in addition to being that sort of safe and protected space, helping co-regulate, right? They help children, this important relationship helps children build the capacities and the skills that they need to be a well-adjusted, well-functioning human, right? So the ability to be able to think and pause and plan, to monitor, and to regulate their behavior. Those are the things that's really the biggest work of our early childhood years, right? Is to learn to understand ourselves, learn to understand others, and be able to manage and regulate our emotions so that we can get along with others, so that we can get our tasks done, right? That we can do the activities, so that we can engage our curiosity and explore and learn more and try more and new things, right? These are things that help children respond to adversity in a positive way and thrive, right? And so all of these things are things that this important adult can do for a child. When we think about, a lot of this is a lot of ideas, it's a lot of changing our perspectives. But when we think about concrete things we can do to support resilience in young children, the first and best, most important is that we are facilitating, right? We are allowing that child to have at least one supportive adult-child relationship, hopefully many, but at least one. 2, we have a responsibility to help build a sense of, I can do this, right? And perceived control for a child. So they say perceived control because we're not just going to hand control over to a child and let them do exactly what they want to do all the time, whenever, in whatever way, right? Perceived control means we want them to feel like they have some control over their lives, because that helps them have that self-efficacy, which is that feeling of like, I can do this. I can try. I might not know how to do it now, but I can try and I'll figure it out, right? Perceived control is a really important element, especially for the toddlers. It makes me think of toddlers. It's that as soon as they realize that they can do things on their own, they desperately want to do things on their own, right? That is also a human drive. It's like as soon as we recognize that we are separate from our caregiver, we are our own person, we can make our own decisions and do things for ourselves, we so actively want to explore and practice that. And so we have to give children those feelings of having some control, even if it's in really small, very safe ways. The third thing is to provide opportunities to strengthen their adaptive skills and their self-regulation, right? So this really is talking a lot about co-regulation. All children, but especially children who have already experienced trauma, need a lot more co-regulation, right? Those kids who already have an ACE score of 4, 5, 6 in their very short lives, they will need more co-regulation, right? So more support from you in deactivating that stress response, and they will probably need it for a little bit longer, right? The fourth thing that we know from the research that we can do to support resilience in young children is really family and community based. So this is really mobilizing and helping to strengthen families and communities to be sources of faith or hope and cultural traditions, right? When we think of routines, a lot of our cultural traditions are very much ritual and routine oriented, right? And so helping families connect to those things and communities connect to those things to be a source of hope and shared culture and shared community is another really, really important practice that we can help, right? To some extent, it may not be the work in the classroom, but it's a really important piece to consider, right? Always having that kind of wondering of how can I support this family outside of the classroom walls, right? All right, so let's take it a little bit more kind of direct, a little bit further into the classroom, right? So what can you do in a classroom with your kids that you work with to build resilience? Obviously, we know this already, and I expect that you're going to go out and share this very important knowledge with everyone that you talk to, everyone you come in contact with. You are now the vehicles to spread the importance of that one safe, stable, loving relationship, right? So obviously, relationships are the key. All the doing, all the things that I can tell you to do, all the ways that we can, foster this or that in kids will only be as effective as the quality of your relationship with that child. Kids know when you're trying to force them to do something that is not coming out of a place of true connection, and they will not want to do it. So stepping into this next section of strategies, always holding in mind that the effectiveness of any of this is very much dependent on the quality of the relationship that you've built with these kids. So before we move on, I want to take a moment to check in. I'm going to pull up the chat. And I want to know, how have you used this in your classroom? How have you cultivated this in your classroom, even if you didn't really know that that was what you were doing? How are you that safe and stable adult for the children that you serve? I'd love to hear some reflections, stories, things that you've noticed. You offer them security and love. I love that. Yeah. Here's a good one too. By listening and withholding judgments. Yeah. Yeah. By listening to children and not immediately jumping to our judging, right? Or trying to correct or add another layer onto the story, right? Here's like with my opinion, here's what I think that story is, really like. Yeah, it's really important. Getting at their level and asking them about their feelings. That's another really important strategy, is physically getting down on their level, right? It's a very different experience when you can kneel down and be in front of a child at eye level and talk to them. Yeah, making connections, interacting all the time, and lots of hugs and smiles. Yes. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be really complex work. It can truly be a lot of hugs and smiles and love, as someone else mentioned, right? Yeah. Yeah. Listening, caring, loving attention, unconditional support. That's beautiful. We haven't talked a lot about that word, but unconditional support is an important point here. Unconditional meaning I will support you no matter what you do, right? No matter how you act, no matter how angry you get, even if you hit me, even if you throw the toy after I told you to put it down gently, right? Having that kind of safe and stable presence, knowing that you are not your behavior, you are not your emotion. I'm still here to support you, right? And being with a child in that way is so powerful. So powerful. And helping them express themselves. Yeah. Yeah. Having words to express how you feel, right? Like all of our language and all of the ways that we support a child's developing language does not just have to be about like labeling things and describing things and what am I doing now? It can really be an important exercise to talk about feelings and how feelings connect to the behavior, right? I see that you were really angry that he took that red block that you were planning on using. And that's why you snatched it away from him and pushed him, right? Like acknowledging that there was a reason for that, right? And you saw it, you acknowledged it. You saw he was mad. That's why he did that, right? But there needs to be a way of solving it. And we need to do it with kindness instead of with force with our friends, right? Yeah. Yeah, being present and emotionally available. That's a really, really important piece here too, because a lot of times I think, especially if we're feeling stressed, if we have some trauma in our history that we have not addressed, that we have not started to heal, it can be really difficult to be in a classroom with children who are also dysregulated, right? It's very easy to get dysregulated ourselves, and it's hard to be emotionally available. It's a lot of work. It can be exhausting. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. Wow, for sharing all this. Helping build a sense of trust. Building trust and creating a sense of security. Yeah, we haven't talked a lot about trust either. But I think that it really just naturally comes from those meaningful relationships. When a child can really feel that you care about them, that you care about them no matter how they're acting, then they trust you, right? And things might actually get better from there, right? Your relationship may get better from there, may improve. Yeah. All right, this will be our last one we reflect on before we move on, but this is a really wonderful statement. You don't have to be perfect to make a positive impact on a child's life. Yes, that is the story of humanity, by the way. You do not have to be perfect because perfect does not exist. It does not exist. There is no perfect teacher. There is no perfect parent. There is no perfect partner, no perfect friend. We are all human and we do our best, but we are constantly rupturing our relationships, right? The important piece is that we repair. And so even when you have a moment, right, of just getting completely fed up, cannot take it anymore, you're you've kept it together for long enough, and it was just, you hit your limit, right? You finally become dysregulated, you start yelling, and sometimes the kids will really notice, right? Because it's very dysregulating for young children to see their adult be very dysregulated, because you're supposed to be the one to bring me down. You're supposed to be the one to calm me. And so when they see adults that are very dysregulated, they can become very dysregulated, right? And actually kind of scared. But when that happens, it's okay to just address it. When you notice it, right? Using our mindfulness, woo, you just yelled at the top of your lungs, and then you notice, I just got really dysregulated. When you notice, you can change. But when that happens, right? If the first child's face you look at looks terrified, you can acknowledge that, right? You can address it and apologize. You can model what you want them to do with their friends. Right? Pause, take a breath. I'm really sorry that I yelled. I shouldn't have done that. I know that it scared you. I'm going to move forward with my quiet voice, and we are going to get back on track. Right? So you don't have to be perfect to make that positive impact. But, that was a beautiful opening to recognizing that we will not always do these things that we want to do. We will not always remember the strategies. We will not always talk with the calmest voice. We will make mistakes, but even with the youngest children, part of that respect and part of building trust with them is acknowledging it. You can model that for them. It might feel weird in the beginning, apologizing to toddlers. It may feel weird, right? Because our society does not often treat children like that. Adults do not apologize to little kids. But you can try it and see how it feels, right? And if we think about it in the frame of modeling, we're modeling what we want them to do with their friends once they realize that they did something that might have hurt someone. But yes, we do not need to be perfect to make a positive impact. Thank you for that. That was fantastic. All right, we're going to move on. We'll have a couple more reflections like this. All right, now we're going to move into, all right, even more direct strategies, right? So we talked about like the kind of big things that you can do to foster resilience. These are some specific things that you can work on building in children, within your classroom setting. So let's go through them. Competence. Competence is our feeling like we can handle things. We got this, right? So this has to do with how we learn to do new things, how we acquire a new skill. Children gain that sense of competence if we allow them to try new things, make a mess in their attempts, try again, try many, many, many more times, even when we know that they are not ready to be there, right? I think of like learning how to dress, learning how to put your own pants on. Oh, toddlers are so motivated to dress themselves, and it takes them so long to figure out how to do it, right? And a lot of times in our adult rushing, we just want to like, whoop, do it for them, quick, next, let's keep going, hurry. but that is not really in service of them. So to build competence, we want to help them have the opportunity to acquire new skills, right? So I think of this kind of like, this actually kind of makes me think a little bit of the Montessori method of introducing a new skill or a new activity, which is watch. First, I'm going to do it, then you watch. Now let's try it together, where we do it together. So I'm really helping, scaffolding the child. And then now you try, right? And let the child try independently. And there will be lots of spills and lots of messes and lots of probable tears because they really want to do it, but they can't yet, right? But the key here is yet. And so this is where, if you've taken any of those wonderful trainings and learning experiences about growth mindset, this is where growth mindset comes in, right? You can't do it yet, but with practice, you will be able to. You'll get there, right? Confidence. So confidence comes as you practice, right? As you're building your competence and you start to actually learn and master new skills, then you can build confidence, right? So confidence is our very solid belief that we can do it, right? We believe in our own abilities. We know we can do it. We got this. And we gain confidence by showing our competence, right? Showing that we can do things. Yay. This is also really important, though. It goes back to offering children opportunities to, and the time to try and try and try until they can do it themselves, rather than what we tend to do a lot of times, especially with the younger ones, which is we notice they're struggling and we jump in and do it for them. And if you've ever noticed, toddlers don't really like that. And they don't like that for a reason. Because imagine if every time you went to do something, right? Like imagine every time you went to cook your family dinner, a chef would run in and be like, no, let me do it. It'll be faster. It'll be better. You would be pretty annoyed, right? Every time you tried to do something for work, someone else swooped in and was like, I've done this before. I can do it. Oh, done. We like to do things ourselves. We like to feel competent. And so our confidence comes along from that, right? When we're allowed to try, when we are allowed to practice, and we finally do start mastering some skills, and we're not shamed for doing things wrong, then we develop confidence. And these two things are really important to resilience, right? Because if you don't develop a sense of confidence, a sense that I can figure things out, and if you don't have confidence in yourself, that really can harm a person's general kind of assumptions about themselves, right? And whether they're worthy and whether they're good or good enough. And so we really want to build these things to continue to help children be resilient, especially in the face of adversity. Character is the next one. I guess these are all, maybe it's a coincidence that these are all C's, but I think that's also maybe a little bit more helpful to remember. So the third C is character. So character is really about having a clear sense of what's right and what's wrong. Right. And so this is, of course, culture dependent. It has a lot to do with societal norms and the assumptions about what is right and wrong, good and bad, all of those kind of expectations of people, right? But at the same time, when we think of character as a universal trait, what we want to do is really notice acts of kindness. So notice when a child is being kind to others. Really notice and acknowledge, right? And celebrate that. Notice when a child is kind to, or have encourage children to notice when someone else is kind to them, right? So it's kind of like that two-way street. Acknowledge when a child's being kind, and also encourage everybody to recognize kindness and to appreciate it. If a child does something kind for them, they can say thank you, right? And offer some gratitude or some nice gesture. Creating that culture of kindness, or, promoting of healthy, positive social interaction, right? We call it pro-social behavior when children are doing things that are helpful or kind or empathetic. Encouraging those pro-social behaviors is a really, really important way of building resilience. Because it's harder for our brain to notice and to feel and to hold on to positive experiences than it is to notice and hold on to negative ones, right? So this is something we know also from the brain, the neuroscience around trauma, is that because our brains are wired to always notice and track and monitor for threats, it is much easier for us to notice something negative than it is for us to notice something positive. It's much easier for us to hold on to something negative, right? Replay it over and over again, get into that like whole body feeling state. It's much easier for our brains to do that because of the way that we've evolved the stress response system to always be monitoring for the next, threat, the next thing that might threaten our lives. We have to choose then to really actively notice positive things. It is not as automatic for our brains to notice those things or to hold on to them. And so that's another reason why here in this promotion of kindness and, wonderful acts of cooperation and of empathy, right? Of like in the photo, helping a child when they've fallen. Those things really need to be actively and intentionally highlighted. And that actually helps to build our resilience as well. The next piece that you can focus on or notice, I think the invitation is always to notice where you do these things already in the classroom, is contribution, right? So this is about a child contributing to others or contributing to your classroom group in a specific way, right? So the goal, like why this is part of resilience, is because we want kids to understand that the world is a better place because they are in it, right? Specifically because they're here. Our classroom community is better. The world is better. And that they have skills, they have, they have competencies, they have things inside them that they can use to help others, right? And to contribute to the well-being of the group and to the success of the group, right? So contribution is really about helping children see their role within the classroom, understanding that everybody has a role. Everyone is an important piece of our classroom family. And, cultivating some opportunities for them to take care of the space, right? We might think of them as chores, but we wouldn't say that. But a lot of times, right, this element of giving children a way of feeling like they are contributing to the whole, to everybody, right, is about taking care of the space, giving them simple things, even the youngest kids, simple things to do to take care of the classroom. If you have, a pet in the classroom, to take care of that pet, to take care of the plants, maybe if you have some plants in the classroom, and offering kids opportunities to be able to make a difference in the class, right? And to also maybe highlight some strengths of theirs, which we'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes. This idea of, kind of comes along with competence. It's related to confidence, but this contribution is just that we want to be an important part of a group, which is a natural human tendency, right? From long, long ago, when humans first evolved, we had to live in a group in order to survive. Right? A random human cannot walk off from their tribe and go and live off in the wilderness by themselves. They did not have the power, the strength, the capacity to do it all on their own. Humans must live in groups to thrive. And so that's really where this stems from, right? We want to feel like a part of a group. We want to feel like an important part of a group. So think about ways that you can give children that kind of experience. Next one is coping. I feel like we've talked a lot about this in a couple of different ways, right? Because coping is really how a child manages a challenge, right? Something that is hard, something that's difficult. We are not talking about managing a traumatic experience. We're really talking about kind of those normal challenges, and young children experience challenges so frequently throughout the day. If you notice, especially in the earliest years, and those toddler years, like the 2s, the 3s, they are trying and not always succeeding hundreds, if not thousands of times a day. It is a constant experience for them because this is the time when they have the drive to do it themselves and they want to, right? And they're learning. And they may not be that coordinated and they haven't done it enough to figure out how to do it. And so there's a lot of trying and a lot of managing challenging experiences, failures, things that don't work out. I think of like a toddler trying to put their shoe on. It can be like a battle with that shoe, right? And that's just one time, if not many, 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 many times a day. So coping is really all about managing our emotions and how we meet the challenge, right? So in the classroom, you can notice when a child is having one of those moments. And really, it's a lot about talking the experience through, right? You're not going to swoop in and do whatever it is for them because that doesn't help. Allowing them to do it, but seeing their frustration, naming the frustration, maybe you can give them like a suggestion of how it might, work better. They do not always take that though. But really it's about, kind of helping them see the connection between the emotion, what they're trying to do, the fact that it's not working, makes you mad, builds your frustration, whatever words, right, are developmentally appropriate for that kiddo. And then talking about, do you need a break? You want to take a pause? We can come back to it in a minute, kind of like giving them that chance to recognize the emotional experience, giving them that choice, right? Inviting the pause, which is just like a mindfulness pause. Pause, you want to come back, your shoe's not working out. I know you want to do it on your own. You want to go sit on the bench, we'll take a few breaths, and then maybe you want to try it again next, right? After that, you can try again. Giving kids a lot of scaffolding when they're experiencing a frustrating event is really what helps them with their coping. Obviously, just like this photo shows, cuddles and snuggles work extremely well when a child is frustrated. Sometimes they just need a little bit of physical contact, a little physical affection, a quick hug, a quick pat, right? Acknowledgement, and then they're good. And they're back to trying whatever they're doing, or they're on to the next thing. But sometimes when you notice that kids who, either are getting really dysregulated really fast, or having really big reactions, like bigger than you would expect for a child that age or that developmental level, then you can do a lot more scaffolding, right? You can do a lot more talking through their emotions. And in our talking through the experience, connecting the emotion to what they're doing, and then giving them the power to choose, right? Do you want to take a break? Do you want to calm down a little bit and then come back to it and try again? That is learning for the future, right? So that when they're frustrated, it's almost like co-regulation. I mean, it's a form of co-regulation, that you're prompting that process in their mind, right? When they try something and they try and they try and they just want to do it, but it's taking so long and it's not working and they get so frustrated. Maybe if you've really walked them through that experience so many times already, they'll be able to recognize the frustration. They'll be able to choose to take a pause. And then maybe come back to it, maybe not, right? Like that's their choice. How do they want to move forward? But when you take the pause, you have the power to choose. And that's also, a really powerful experience for young kids because they don't have control over a lot in their lives. And so to have control like that, and especially to start to have control over their emotions like that, is really powerful and really supportive of resilience in the future. Speaking of control, so this is about inner control. Okay. And I highlighted when that other piece that said like perceived control, give the child, allow the child to have perceived control. That does not mean give the child control. Does not mean that. Perceived control just means they feel like they're in control, right? And that's exactly what is on this slide too, inner control. There is so much about a baby, a toddler, a young child's life that they have absolutely no say and no control in. And as we develop over the first 5 years, we are noticing with more and more clarity and better understanding that we should have control, right? I can do things. I can make my own decisions that are different from everybody else. I can do things that are different from what other people are doing. And all they want to do is exercise that. And so giving children a sense of control over some things in their life is really important, because if you don't give them that, it does not build their sense of competence, which does not build a sense of confidence, right? All of these things are so related. So control is, just like we say to give children choices, and the choices are always between something that the adults find an acceptable option, right? It is not like you can go out to playground with us right now, or you can just sit in the classroom by yourself. Like that's not a safe option. We would not give them that option, right? We would say you can walk out to the playground with us, or you can hop like a bunny out to the playground with us, right? Both options get them where we need them to be. But they're like, you know what? I will hop like a bunny today. And they feel like they just made a decision for themselves and had control over something that they really didn't have control over because everyone was going onto the playground right now, no matter what, right? So giving kids, even in the tiniest of ways, right? It may seem really insignificant to us. It may seem silly. I mean, like I literally laughed about that example I just gave. But when we give kids those little decisions, they feel like they are making a decision for themselves and they're controlling their bodies in the way that they chose, and they're doing it and they did it and they feel good about it. Right? So it's important to think about where you can give kids these kinds of choices, right? To be in control of themselves and to have a sense of control over their lives. It can be in, picking out clothes. It can be in, picking out the colors of something. A lot of times we in kind of small group activities where kids are in different areas in the classroom doing different things, we can promote that sense of control by giving them the choice of where they go today, what they do. This child went to go take care of the plants. The other one in the background is, I think, doing some kind of writing. You can give kids plenty of options. It does take a little bit of planning and intention, though, to really think about this. And the control piece is especially important for the children who have experienced trauma, because they have early experiences that have been very, very, very much out of their control, right? Probably much more so than a child who's typically developing, who hasn't experienced trauma, and gaining that sense of control over themselves and even a little bit over the world is critical to them feeling safe. Right? You can be as loving and cuddly and wonderful and, emotionally available for a child, and that will be wonderful. But if they still feel completely out of control in their life, they will be missing a piece, right? There will be like a missing piece of that safety and security that you're trying to offer them. They need a sense of control over their own selves as well. And connection is the last one, obviously, because it's related to relationships. So children need to have the meaningful relationships with other people, and for all the reasons I've already said. But also, I love the way that they kind of like frame this here, right? It also sends the message that we can get through this together. When you have a good connection with your classroom, right? The teacher with the kids with each other, you feel like you can weather any storm. Things, people might be grumpy one day, you might be having a rough time, but you'll be okay, right? It's this sense of hope that deep and meaningful connections to other people can give us. That's really, really powerful, right? I love this picture. All right. Those were a lot of factors that can foster resilience in your classroom. I can put them back on the screen so that we can use them to reflect. But I want to pull up the chat and offer, how either do you foster these in your classroom, or how might you start? As as you were listening, as I was describing all these things, what will it look like for you in your classroom? How might you facilitate these 7 C's? Here, I'm going to go back so you can see them all. The 7 C's of resilience. What stood out to you? It was a lot. They're all very related, but was there something that really stood out to you that you feel like you can work on or improve or change? What do you think? Mm, yeah. Yep, I love that. Most important is to have a lot of connection with the kids. That's right. Nice. Yeah. Perceived control. I know. Sometimes that's such an easy one to overlook because it requires us to, kind of do more, right? To think more, to do more, to give kids a lot of reasonable choices to help them feel safe and connected and seen. But it's really, really worth it, especially for children who've experienced trauma and had so much happen to them that they had no control over, right? Yeah. Yeah, building strong relationships. A lot of folks mentioning the control piece. Yeah, giving kids a sense of control. Hmm. Yeah, we really want children to feel able, right? And competent. We want them to feel like they can do it. They may not be able to do it the first time or the 5th time or even the 10th time, but they are learning. That is literally the work of their age group. They are learning how to do, how to be, how to feel. They're learning everything, and we want them to know that it's okay to try and to fail and to try 1,000 more times, and eventually they'll get it, right? And we want to help them have confidence in that, and not to make them feel bad for not being able to do things as fast as we think they should, right? Yeah. Yeah, confidence. Yeah, trial and error. It's a lot of trial and error. Yep. Thank you, everybody who just put their reflections in the chat. All right. Let's move on. All right. So I also wanted to talk about finding and celebrating children's strengths, because this is another beautiful way of building resilience in children, is by finding their strengths, right? Being able to sort of find and recognize them as in your role as the teacher, hopefully inviting the families to share what they think their children's strengths are as well, because they get a slightly different view of the child than you do in the home and community settings. So finding and celebrating children's strengths is a really lovely way to build that classroom community, and to be really intentional about celebrating the things that children are doing well, the gifts that they bring to the classroom, and to their friends and to the relationships with everybody there, right? So there's a couple of different strengths. We're gonna walk through them just so that you can have some ideas of like what kinds of strengths should I be looking for? What kinds of things like might I want to explore if it's not immediately, if nothing really comes to mind when I think of each child in my class and I'm not sure what their strengths are. There's different kinds of strengths, right? And so this first bunch are what we would consider character strengths. They have to do with our way of being and how we are, right? So some of these things can be if we're helpful, if we're thoughtful, if we're kind, if we're cooperative, if we're curious, if we're truthful or honest. Maybe we're very hardworking, right? A child who's really persistent at tasks, or maybe we're brave, right? So these are all character strengths that you can recognize and celebrate in the moment when you see a child doing or being this way. Or you can turn it into a more structured activity where you invite the children to think about, what are their own strengths? And then the classroom can think about, what do you think his strengths are? And everybody can share, right, what they think this child's strengths are. So it can really turn into more of a group reflection, which is really nice sometimes. There are social strengths, right? So you can notice that a child really loves group activities with people. They're great at sharing or taking turns. They may be a good listener. They like to make friends. You may notice that a child is really great about asking for help when they need help. They can express their emotions really well. They have a good sense of humor. You can notice maybe if you have animals or pets or even plants in your classroom, if you take care of them, someone is a good caregiver. They're good with those animals or those plants. You can notice that a child's good with babies or good with the younger kids in the class, right? If it's a multi-age classroom. These are some strengths based in our social development. You might notice some creativity strengths, right? They're very creative. They really enjoy drawing. They love dancing or singing. You might notice that they have a very active imagination, or that they really love to tell stories, right? So these can be strengths that are based in artistic expression or creativity. You can see literacy strengths. You can see a child who is really interested in books, really enjoys being read to, maybe finding a child who has a great memory, a vivid imagination, and some children who are really enjoy rhymes and are very skilled at making rhymes and detecting rhymes and seeing those patterns in language. There's also strengths that are more in our logical thinking or math skills. So you can find a child's strengths in solving puzzles, in how they can count, in maybe how they sort objects in lots of very complex ways, perhaps, or a child who loves to assemble and disassemble things, right? And you can also find children who have strengths in their motor skills and their physical ability, right? So maybe they have fantastic physical strength and really great balance. Maybe they have strength in running and kicking and jumping, right? And kind of power in those moves. Maybe you find children who really enjoy riding their tricycles, or children who have good hand-eye coordination, right? So these are all strengths that we can look for, that we can identify in the kids that we're serving, and we can celebrate with them. And of course, one's related to language and communication, right? You can acknowledge when a child uses a lot of words. They use their words to express their needs. They use their words to express their feelings. Some children, you can just tell, love learning words and song, and they love listening to stories, right? So those were just some, only some of many, many, many strengths that you can find in young children. I'm wondering if you ever make a practice of celebrating the strengths of the children in your classroom. Have you ever thought about it? Or is it something that you do? You know, I know that some schools and some classrooms for birthdays, they'll do birthday acknowledgements. And, you know, everyone will go around and say something, you know, that they acknowledge and appreciate about that child. And that could be a really beautiful kind of structured practice, recognizing and celebrating kids' successes and their strengths, right? So I'm curious, have you ever done any practices like this? How do you feel like you celebrate strengths in the children that you have in your classroom? Congratulating them, yep, recognizing the good work they did and encouraging them to continue doing it. Yeah, that sounds a little more sort of task-based, activity-based, right? But that is important to recognize when a child is doing good work and encouraging them to keep going, right? Continue doing it. Yeah. Yeah, noticing what a child's doing and describing it can be a helpful way of kind of connecting to them and what they're doing and engaging like their interest. Yeah. Hmm. Telling kids you're awesome. Yay. Everybody wants to hear that. That's true. And during morning meetings and closing meetings. Oh, we can give shout outs to the students or the teachers. I love that. For showing kindness or perseverance. That's a great way of helping to promote those pro-social behaviors, right? And to acknowledging good work. Yeah. Yeah. Veronica gives out certificates. That's awesome. Monthly recognitions. Yeah, it's nice to acknowledge when a child is playing really nicely with their friends or they're doing something that's helping their friends. It is always wonderful to name that out loud, right? Because that positive attention and that recognition will help those things happen more often. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of your feedback sounds like it's really focused on kind of doing a good job, right? Or a task or an activity. So I wonder, I would invite you to think about how you might give a little feedback or celebrate the strengths that are more strengths of their of themselves, right? In the way that they are, as opposed to the things that they do. That's my invitation to you, is to think about recognizing the strengths of the children as themselves, in addition to all the wonderful things that they're doing, right? It's always holding that how we are and our way of being is also as important as what we're doing. Yeah, yeah. And encouraging them, yes, you can do it, you did it, you can do it, keep going. Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. Amazing. Thank you. Thanks for everybody for sharing that. And yeah, I think the invitation here is to think about, to build resilience. It's really about us feeling capable, feeling confident in ourselves, because that's what's going to carry us through hardship. That's what's going to carry us through adversity, right? If we feel like we are capable people, if we feel confident in ourselves, we'll have a much better view of the hard times as just a hard time, right? And there will be good times and there will be hard times again. It's sort of like the hills and the valleys, right? Life is not just flat, same stuff happens all the time. There's good and there's bad. There's wonderful and beautiful times, and then there's really hard times. But it's these things that we just talked about building in children, right? Competence and confidence that will help us see the long view, know that we will be okay through this hard time, right? And that's very, very much also what mindfulness helps us to develop, right? All of this is so interconnected. So thank you, everybody who just shared in the chat for ways that you celebrate your kiddos. I want to give us a couple of mindfulness strategies. So these are specific things. I know a lot of you shared some great things that you were doing in your classroom already during Adriana's session, but I want to give you a couple more. And I'm going to also include this in the resources for you all. The Calm app is a really wonderful resource. It has fantastic practices for kids that you can use. And much of this is taken from them. And actually these links come from the Calm app too. They link directly to some great meditations and practices for young children. So I'll include this in the resources that we can send you afterwards. So if you're interested in building more of these mindfulness practices into your routines, as we talked about earlier this morning, hopefully you got a taste for, how it feels, how it can just change your whole experience, right? It can change the way your body feels. It can change the way your mind feels and your emotional state. Even just a few minutes of just noticing the present moment, right? We want to be able to offer that as a tool for children to access as young as they possibly can, right? Children are already extremely mindful. They tend not to be in the past or in the future like adults tend to be, right? They tend to live in the moment. What is here, what I'm doing, what's in front of me is all that there is. And so really it's just our job in helping to keep that capacity really strong in children. So here's one practice you can do. Sometimes it's called teddy bear breathing. Inviting the children to lie down. This is a great one to build into maybe your nap time routines once everybody is actually laid down. If you have stuffed animals for everyone, give everybody, a teddy bear or whatever it is that they want to hold on their belly. And just let them hold that teddy bear on their belly as they breathe, and just notice how the bear goes up and the bear goes down, right? As they breathe in and breathe out, it helps them connect to the breath by watching the physical movement of their body breathing. And so it sounds so simple, but it can be really fun. And it really connects it to what young children need, which is a sensory experience, right? Instead of just say like, notice your breath in and breath out, like we can guide adults to do. That does not work for young children. They need a lot more concrete connection to their senses. And so they love doing this. Stuffed animal breathing, teddy bear breathing, whatever you have around, they love watching this. There's also a good balloon breath practice that you'll get in the resources too. Sometimes we can just count breaths, right? You can have everybody kind of sitting. Maybe this would be good, or even standing. This can be a really nice practice for transitions. If you're, waiting in line to wash your hands or to use the potty, or, something where you're kind of waiting, this can be a nice practice to use, right? Because all you need to do is stand and breathe and count your breaths, right? Just count in and out. It can also turn into an early math lesson, right? A counting lesson. And then you can also invite them to notice the connection to, as we count our breaths, the more breaths we have, the higher we count, and invite them to notice how their body feels. Do you feel calmer? Does your body feel quieter? How does it feel? And start to make that connection of kind of settling and just noticing the breath. Counting your breaths can help to calm the body, right? There's a really cute practice as well using Moana about breathing like the ocean. This is a good one. I saw a couple of people in the chat talking about, smell the flower and blow out the candle. This is very, very similar, right? You can, and the key to doing mindfulness with kids is to make it fun. It's totally okay to be silly, to laugh about it, to invite the kids to make up, ideas for like what they're doing in this practice, right? But you can call it anything, right? But this idea of cooling the pizza. So this would be like, you breathe in, and then you breathe out a slow, long breath, like you're cooling off your pizza that's too hot to eat, right? But you can't do it because then you'll start feeling lightheaded and yucky, right? You have to go slow, and it'll take the pizza a little while to cool down. It's a really fun way, and you can adapt it to whatever it is that they might want to be doing. or cooling down or blowing out, right? Like the birthday candle breathing too is another good practice like this. A sensory walk is another beautiful way, right? So those other couple that I just talked about are really more breathing practices. A sensory walk can be really, really fun. Kids love this, especially if you have an outdoor space that might have some, I don't know, some plants, a butterfly garden. I mean, it can be as elaborate or as simple as you need it to be, but just inviting children to notice what their senses are noticing, right? Like maybe you'll go through on a walk through the school and just notice the different smells that you smell in the different parts of the school, right? Maybe one, you walk by one classroom and it's lunchtime in there and you smell food, and you walk by another class and they just cleaned and you smell the cleaning solution, right? Like all the different smells. You can invite kids to just notice different colors wherever they are. And there is a nice see, hear, and feel exercise that you can follow along to in the Calm app. But yeah, just inviting kids to connect to their senses is the easiest way to practice mindfulness. Just, right now, like plant your feet on the floor and open your eyes and notice what colors are around you. It gets them into this present moment and very connected to their body. You can also do some guided relaxation, right? This is just like the idea of like the very small body scan that we practiced earlier today, just focusing on noticing each part of the body, trying to relax it as you go, kind of scanning all the way through the body. This can be a really great practice to do at nap time as well, especially for those kids who are restless, don't fall asleep easily. It's a really great one. And then also, incorporating art is an entire, oh my gosh, there's so much to explore there with how to invite mindfulness and to practice mindfulness with art. But I would say the easiest one is just inviting your child to draw, or if it's developmentally appropriate for their age, to write about their day, right? To write about how they felt that day, or the things that they're grateful for, or to draw that, right? What did you feel today? Or what are you really thankful for today, right? What was something wonderful that happened? These are really, really great ways to start to cultivate some of those acknowledgements of, of others, of contributions, of, myself and maybe my classmates to the whole, to really building connections in this way. It's a great option, especially for those creative kiddos. All right. So one more reflection. I've heard a little bit, a couple of you were using some breath awareness practices, but I'm wondering for those of you who are not really, haven't really started using mindfulness, maybe weren't really sure. Hopefully we've given you a little bit of a taste of what it can be and a couple of ideas. How might you add it to your classroom, and what do you see that? I guess, where do you see that, right? How could you incorporate more mindfulness into your day? What would it look like? I'm going to pull up my chat. Oh yeah, star breathing. That's another great one. There's another great one too. I think it has different names, but I've heard it just be like the 5-finger breathing, right? So you just literally trace your finger up and you breathe in as it goes up the finger and out as it goes down the finger, right? You breathe in as you move up and breathe out as you go down. You can do it as slow as you need to, but it's really just a way of giving ourselves time to do 5 really nice, slow breaths. Yeah. All right. It's wonderful that some of you have been incorporating mindfulness, songs, games, yeah, stories and things that naturally attract their attention. That's a great point too, because you always want to kind of follow their lead and notice what they're noticing and be able to use that, right? Rather than us always directing them to something. Yeah. Oh, some yoga too. All right. Some mindful movements. I love that. Very nice. Awesome. Yeah. So, depending on what you're doing, if it's a movement practice, you can use it where you need a little bit of time of like energizing. If you want to kind of use it as like a grounding, you can use it in those times. Maybe after like a big group time, you're trying to get everybody back together and quieted down and before you move on to the next thing. Yeah. All right. A lot of breathing practices. I'm so happy to hear this. Amazing. Amazing. All right. Fantastic, everybody. So, oh my goodness, we only have 2 minutes left. I cannot end today without recognizing that children's health depends on our health, and recognizing you and your well-being in all of this. And so, that is the subject for many, many more sessions. But I just want you to know that it is absolutely something that is as important as what goes on in your classroom, is how well you are. We can talk about well-being another time. There's plenty to dive into, but I just want you to know that we are here for you because we recognize and celebrate that you are those important people in all children that you serve, right? In all of their lives. And you can be that one critical person that a child who's already experienced trauma needs in order to be well and to be safe and to be healthy for the rest of their life. So we're going to be here for you. Both Adriana and I look forward to bringing you lots more opportunities to learn and to practice and to cultivate your own well-being as well, right? So thank you so much for being here today on this Saturday. The Saturday after school got out. I know that there's a lot of competing demands on your time and your attention, and I am so grateful that you chose to spend it with us. So thank you.